Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us for our semifinals prediction show. I'm your host, Lauren Khalil. If you like listening to us chat about CrossFit news and everything that's going on in the sport, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For each semifinal, we're going to be playing a game with our sports analysts, Tommy Marquez, Brian Friend, and Patrick Clark. We're just going to continue on this through our semifinals, our month of semifinals, where we see who they're picking to punch their ticket to the CrossFit Games. The way it's going to work is each analyst is going to pick their games ticket predictions for both the men and women with wildcard athletes. Then, through this entire month, they will receive a point for every athlete they get correct, an additional point if they correctly predict their placing. Today, we're moving on to tackle the Lowlands Throwdown. We're going to start with the men's side this time, and right off the bat again, a little more variation in these picks, but 1 and 2 we have BKG, Luca Ducic for all three of you guys. Do we think that this is guaranteed what we're going to see? Why? Let's start with you, Tommy. Did you pick them for your 1 and 2?
Well, first off, nothing in this sport is guaranteed, right? Because I think that you go back to the last time we had the Europe Regional in 2018, everyone would have, bet all of King Midas's silver that BKG was going to win, and then we got a surprise story like Roman Krennikov that came out from the clouds. But I think as far as body of work is concerned, I think Bjorkman Carl Gudmundsson is a perennial podium contender on the men's side, and he has been the lead dog and the representative that quietly has led the Europe charge for basically the last 8 years now. I think for Ducic, I think we saw kind of a coming out party for him in terms of like breaking through to the games, finding success, understanding what goes with that success, and then being able to take the feedback from the games and parlay that into success in the offseason with a strong performance in Dubai and working with the Mayhem team. So I think what seemed like an interesting decision at the time a few years back when he turned down his invite, it seemed to suggest that he had a long game in mind and that he's slowly but surely executing that, which is why I think based on what I've seen at the games in the offseason at particular events, I think they're the two guys to beat.
Brian, when we look at your order, you have the brothers as 2 and 3. What led you to that decision when analyzing and picking your predictions?
Well, last year in the online version of semifinals, they both competed at the German Throwdown, where they took second and third respectively in this order. And I was quite surprised. I had Luca ranked somewhere in the mid-teens going into semifinals last year in his semifinal, and he obviously did very, very well in that format, and did less well at the games relative to his brother. But I have had an opportunity to talk to his coach. He's working with the Misfit guys, and they've had some extremely positive things to say about his work ethic, his commitment, his training cycles. And I have a reason to believe that he's fitter this year than he was last year when he took third in the semifinals coming out of Europe. I also think that just knowing what the programming is there at the Lowlands Throwdown, that it's not like sometimes in these formats you can have like these very creative and elaborate types of workouts, and I don't really see that at the Lowlands. It's very much straightforward, classic CrossFit type stuff, and I think that this is an environment that should suit him very, very well. It's a difficult field, and there's no guarantee that he'll have this kind of a finish that he had last year. But based on the things I've heard and the things I know about him relative to what's going to be showing up in that test, I think Luke is definitely a good pick for a game spot.
PC, I want to talk to you about Sam Stewart. Brian doesn't have him anywhere in his 1 through 5, no wild card. Tommy does have him as the 5th place overall at Lowlands, but you have him all the way up to 3rd. Why did you place him there? And it looks like PC's having some technical difficulties, but he has Sam Stewart 3rd. Tommy, you have him in your top 5. Brian, why did you not put him in any of your picks or even your wild card?
Yeah, well, it really has nothing to do with Sam. To me, it's just that there are other guys in this field that I think are better than him. And I think it's a pretty tough draw in terms of a men's field for Europe. And so in the 4 and 5 spots, I've got Adrian Mundweiler, who's a perennial games competitor when he's healthy, and Wildis Upanex, who is a guy that I've been a fan of for a long time, that I think has, just for little reasons here or there, not necessarily made the breakthrough that he potentially could make, but I still think he's getting better. He's in his mid-20s. And, I think it's just nothing against Sam Stewart at all. I mean, I actually think his training is probably going very well from the things I've heard. I just think that these guys might be a little bit better suited in this environment with the programming that we've seen. And then for the wild card, I didn't necessarily pick guys that I thought would be sixth for the wild card. I tried to pick someone that was a little bit lesser known. And Sam Stewart obviously made the games last year and is someone that is, he's training with the Training Think Tank guys. People know about him. Whereas Haraldur Holgersson, who's a guy that was one of my Young Guns picks last season, is a lesser known. He's probably the next best guy in Iceland right now after BKG, but he hasn't really had a great performance since the 2020 Strength and Depth. However, at 2020 Strength and Depth, he beat guys like Will Moorhead, Alex Katulis, Zach George, Josh Alchama that are like very well known in different parts of the world. And he looked really good in a couple of events that made me think that he's got some potential moving forward in his career. So I don't think this is a good draw for him to have a chance to make the games this year, but I do think that he'll be in that final heat and he'll have some pretty impressive performances that'll catch people's eye.
Before we move to the women's, Tommy, talk to us about your wild card pick.
So, hold on, let me grab this up. Moritz Fiebig. So he's a guy that I think, like, given Brian's mentioning of the programming being a little bit more straight up like classic CrossFit, I think that benefits someone like Moritz, who I've seen do well in on formats and quarterfinals, but has sometimes struggled with higher end like games exclusive type programming at places like Dubai. And I've seen flashes from him where he can put up some really impressive scores. So I think if we get some more of that classic CrossFit programming and he catches a couple breaks here or there, that if he could definitely have a good weekend and at the very least keep himself in the mix. And I very much agree with Brian on a lot of this. I think there's a handful of guys that are going to be in the mix quite a bit. I think it's going to be bonkers coming into the final day, and there's been so much up for grabs. And we could easily see 3 or 4 other people like Holgersson as well that could be in the mix that a lot of people are unfamiliar with.
Let's move on now to the women's side. I don't think there's many people that would argue with your 2 first picks and the order. All 3 of you had Laura Horvath and Gabby Magala as 1 and 2, but let's move on the 3 through 5. That's really where we see some differences. Brian, we'll start with you. How did you come to your picks on the women's side?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who follows the stuff that I put out knows that I'm a huge fan of Karen Freyova, but I got to be honest, like, this is kind of my last opportunity for her. I've been touting her as someone who is just as good as the best women in Europe when it comes to live competitions. And it's, she just barely missed the games last year. She was 6th place. All 5 women who beat her placed 13th or better at the games. Like, that's just like devastating. It's like, oh my God. And I think she's better than some of those in live competition as well, but she has to do it. And basically, yes, Laura and Gabby are amongst, probably the top 5 in the world. And Sarah Sigmundsdottir's coming back from injury. I mean, if she is actually healthy and able to execute everything to the level that she wants to, she certainly could take the 3 spot. But outside of that, I think Karen is the next best woman in this field. And it's just a matter of her putting the pieces together when it matters.
All right, Tommy, you put Sarah as 3rd. Do you think that she's a healthy Sarah and under, a full year of training under the same coach, going back and forth between her home and Training Think Tank? Why put her at 3rd?
I just think that, hearing what Brian says about the relatively straightforward nature of the programming here, I just think that benefits Sarah in the long run. I think the closer we get to more classic CrossFit programming, stuff you see in quarterfinals, stuff you see in the open, almost like quarterfinals plus type stuff, and we get outside of the creative and don't get outside of the creative box, I think that just benefits her both from a physical perspective and still rehabbing and trying to make sure her knee is healthy, and from a mental perspective in terms of understanding that, hey, I've done this type of stuff before and I've been able to do this at a very high level, so I can do it now. And so I think that goes a long way in helping someone like Sarah in particular that's really just trying to find her mojo and get it back a little bit. And so that's why I kind of put her there, because I think if we had maybe seen something a little bit more robust, then maybe I might have swapped her with a few athletes or even put some other people in. But I think just from a stars aligning type perspective, having straightforward programming is going to be a huge benefit for her.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us again. Another semifinals that we're looking forward to. It's going to kick off. It's going to be a fun month seeing your predictions. And There's going to be a champion crowned at the end of this.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.